Does this seem familiar to anyone? Does this seem like Daniel Green by any chance? Anyone? Anyone? Hello, welcome to Bookcase Corner. Yes, that's right, I've decided to give this corner of the room a name. It's Bookcase Corner. And over there, that's Keyboard Corner. And over there, that's Computer Corner. Do you see what I did there? All my corners have a k. Anyway, the reason I'm in Bookcase Corner is because I'm going to give you a bookshelf tour. This has been a requested item, so I'm doing it specifically for the people who asked for it. Personally, I struggle with these. I did attempt to do one once before, so I'm going to try again to do a bookcase tour. And I'm sitting down to do it because, as it turns out, I'm a big fat fatty and I get out of breath very easily. I'm actually wearing a heart monitor to do this. I can tell you, bear with me. My heart rate is currently 80 beats per minute. That's a little bit faster than usual, but a lot slower than it would be if I wasn't sitting down taking it easy. So I'm going to try and do this whole thing while sitting down. The result of that is that I'm not actually going to be standing up. The plan was to do the whole tour from a sitting position, which would be a lot more comfortable for me and a lot less breathless for you. And I know that it can't be much fun listening to me doing heavy breathing on this mic that's practically inside my mouth. But as it turns out, my shelves are quite tall and I'm short even when I'm standing up. So essentially what I'm going to do is rush through the first couple of shelves. So without further ado, let's go. On the top shelf we have an egg, and hiding behind the egg we have the Riven Codex, or the Riven Codex. That is the encyclopedia for the David Eddings books, specifically the Belgariad, that's the first 5 books, and then the Mallorian, which is the next 5 books, and then the next 2 books after that, which are the 2 first-person autobiographies by the 2 main sorcerers. And I made a whole separate video about these books, so look at the video. It's the Eddings video, and then the rest of that shelf, these are all Eddings books, but as I mentioned in a previous video, after the Belgariad, the Mallorian and the 2 sorcerers' autobiographies, I stopped enjoying them. On the next shelf down we have a sculpture, which was a birthday present from someone, and then we have the Katharine Kerr books. And again, I made a video all about these, so you can watch my Katharine Kerr video. They're the dagger spell books. These are officially my favourite books, and that's why they're on this shelf, because they're at eye level, and they're my favourite books, so I want to be able to look at them without having to stand on tiptoes or crouch down. The Katharine Kerr books are discussed in detail in my Deverry book report, so you can find out more about them there. And the next book on the shelf is The Keys to Paradise by Robert E. Vardeman, and again I made a separate video about this, which I recommend. After that we have some shiny shoes, and we have the Book of Words trilogy, The Baker's Boy, A Man Betrayed and Master and Fool. And this is a trilogy that I read years and years ago and thoroughly enjoyed, and then promptly forgot. And these are on my TBR. I mentioned them quite recently. I do intend to read them again. However, there has been a slight hiccup with that plan, in that when I tried to, I discovered that my middle-aged eyeballs are not as good as they once were. They're failing, and I now find it very hard reading off yellowed book pages. So I'm waiting for a point when my finances will allow me to justifiably buy Kindle versions of books that I've already paid for, and that's going to probably be sometime in the new year. So after the Book of Words, we have a rather nice... This thing is really, really tacky. It kind of represents my love of musical theatre and general campiness. It's not specifically Phantom of the Opera, but it does kind of feel a little bit Phantom of the Opera-esque. And behind the mask, we have The Story of the Amulet by E. Nesbit. Again, I made a separate video about that. And we also have the Borribles trilogy by Michael de Larrabeiti, about which I also made a video, and I recommend it. I recommend the video, and I also recommend these books. These are fabulous. They are some of the best children's books ever written, and they're very grown up. There's swearing and violence and all sorts. I do love me some Borribles. Oh, get back in your place. Oh, I can't get it back in its slot. Oh, Jesus, I can't get it in its slot. That's not the first time I've said that either. Oh, I'm going to check my... Look at that, 101. My pulse has gone up through trying to get a book back in its slot. This is why I prefer to do these things sitting down. Shelf number 3 has all sorts of gubbins on it. We've got some sand, which I picked up in Egypt, and various marble artefacts. Here we have my Raymond E. Feist collection. We've got Magician, that's Feist's first book, followed by Silverthorn and A Darkness at Sethenon. And then we've got Shadow of a Dark Queen, Rise of a Merchant Prince, Rage of a Demon King, and Shards of a Broken Crown. And then we've got Prince of the Blood and The King's Buccaneer. And here we have some of my favourite books ever written. So favourite-y, in fact, that I'm going to actually take them out and display them here. I do apologise for all the reflections. That's quite annoying, isn't it? But here we have Daughter of the Empire, Servant of the Empire, and Mistress of the Empire. These are the standalone trilogy that fit within the rest of the Feist canon. These actually happen concurrently with the events in Magician, Silverthorn, and A Darkness at Sethenon. The central race in this trilogy are the antagonists of the rest of the Mid-Kemia books. These books take place on Keloan, which is the enemy planet, but we're viewing things from their perspective, and actually I prefer it that way. You can read them as part of the main narrative, or you can read them as a standalone set. I've read all of Feist's books, but these are the ones that I repeatedly read over and over again on a regular basis. I recommend looking at the video that I made about the Empire trilogy by Raymond E. Feist and Janny Wurts to get more details. But these are fabulous, fabulous books, and they come with my highest possible recommendation. After the Feist books on this shelf, I've got the Shannara Books by Terry Brooks. I've gone all Sean Connery. And I don't know if I've got a full set, but I've certainly got a lot of them, and I haven't read all of them. This is another set of books where I read the first one and enjoyed it, but obviously not enough to continue reading. And I will probably read them at some point. I hear that they're quite derivative and kind of a copy of The Lord of the Rings, but really what isn't? Here we've got my pride flag. I think it's important to pin your colours to the mast, so that's what I've done there. A Penguin English Dictionary, because why not? And we've got some Bryson books. I've got more, but these are just the ones that happen to end up here. Then on the next shelf, we've got the Memory, Sorrow and Thorn books by Tad Williams, the Dragonbone Chair, Stone of Farewell, and Green Angel Tower Parts 1 and 2. And these I also mentioned quite recently in a TBR video, and for the same reason as the Book of Words trilogy, I've discovered that I can't actually read them off the yellowed, faded pages of these ancient paperbacks. So I'm going to wait until I can get them on Kindle and read them properly. If I stand any chance at all of actually enjoying these books, it's going to be on the Kindle version. After that, we've got the Far Kingdoms by Alan Cole and Chris Bunch, and the sequel to that, which is The Warrior's Tale by the same authors. The Far Kingdoms I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed. This is unusual in that it's a first-person book, and it's a quest for a magical land, and it's very adventurous and a really enjoyable read. However, the sequel, The Warrior's Tale, this is written by another character. It's again first person, but this time it's the first person account of the sister of the main character from this book, and that kind of killed the whole thing for me. I really liked this guy and enjoyed reading about his exploits, and the sequel was just disappointing because I wasn't interested in his sister and didn't really care what she had to say about anything. So I didn't finish reading that book. And we've got a cat again. That's another little statue that I bought while I was in Egypt. I've got many of these types of things. And then we've got The Eye of the World. And in one of my videos, I can't remember which one, I finally admitted to the crime of grand larceny, because I did actually steal this book. It's stolen property and I ain't giving it back. So I've got The Eye of the World by Jordan. I've read all of the rest of the Wheel of Time books, but I only own this one, and not in a strictly legal way. And on top of that, we've got The Island at the Top of the World. Now, this was in my TBR, and unlike the other books, despite having particularly faded and yellow pages, because this was so short, I did soldier on and I read the whole thing, and I flipping hated it. And the reason I hated it is because I saw the film first, the Disney film, which is set in the Victorian era. As you can see from the illustration, we can't see that. If you look at the back, look at this fabulous hot air balloon, this Victorian style hot air balloon. This is a depiction of the balloon from the film. I was looking forward to reading about this in the book, but the book, unlike the film, is set in the 1960s. The character's a helicopter pilot. The hot air balloon isn't in it. None of the good stuff from the Disney film is in this book. This book reads like an Alistair MacLean novel, and I really hate Alistair MacLean. So the book was a terrible disappointment. If it hadn't have been so short, I would have DNF'd the hell out of it. But as it is, I read it, didn't like it, and decided I couldn't even be bothered to do a book report about it. So consider this my book report for The Island at the Top of the World. If you're interested in it at all, watch the Disney film rather than reading that book. We've got The Summer Tree, we've got Sorcery Rising. Next, we've got The Wolves of Time. This is a book that I bought because I really, really loved the illustration. I love wolves. I've always had a deep affinity for wolves and wolf stories. Alice in Wonderland, Wood Magic. We've got David Copperfield by Charles Dickens. We've got The Return of Sherlock Holmes by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. The Story of the Treasure Seekers. This is another E. Nesbit book. I do love me a bit of E. Nesbit. The Sum of All Men. We've got The Journey to the Centre of the Earth by Jules Verne. I do love me some dinosaur books. I like these old classic dinosaur adventures. It would be lovely if I could show you these cover illustrations without all the reflections, but I don't currently have a flatbed scanner. We've got Children of the New Forest. We've got Oliver Twist. We've got some these are wooden carvings of See No Evil, Hear No Evil, Speak No Evil. So there we have a Parliament of Owls, Guarding, Box of Delights and Jeremy Clarkson. Then on the next shelf down, we've got all sorts of crap. We've got a pot, and we've got The World According to Clarkson. Then we've got the Billy Connolly autobiography written by him and his wife Pamela Stevenson. And then we've got the Chronicles of Narnia. These are ancient, very, very tatty, falling apart. These are my oldest books that I own. And after that, we've got The Singing Tree. Now, this is an interesting book. It's by Brian Parvin. It's after the Holocaust, a haunting fantasy. This is one of those books like The Plague Dogs or Watership Down or any of those other anthropomorphic books where the central characters are animals and they talk and think like people, but they live like the animals that they are. And it's very depressing, it's post-apocalyptic, it's very dark and bleak, and it's got a very sad and miserable ending. I have to say, I thoroughly enjoyed reading it at the time, apart from the ending, which made me cry a lot and stayed with me for the rest of my life. I only ever read it once, but I still remember the exact wording, the final words of the book, because they had a very profound and lasting effect on me. So that's a book that you should read with a certain amount of caution if you get upset by things involving animals. Then, after The Singing Tree, we've got some Pelucida books. These are by Edgar Rice Burroughs, whose name you will no doubt recognise because he invented Tarzan. And these books have titties on the front, and they are pulp fantasy from the good old days. You might actually recognise the title At the Earth's Core because that was made into a film starring Doug McClure and Peter Cushing in the mid-70s. And the rest of the series features Amazonian women with tits and people fighting monsters and more monsters and more titties. These are classic pulp fantasy books from the good old days. I bought these from a second-hand bookshop when I was probably around 13 or 14, and I think it's pretty clear why I bought them, and I thoroughly enjoyed them. They're actually really good stories. I haven't read them since I was a teenager, so my opinion of them is based purely on my impressions of them as a teenage boy, but these were always in my school bag at school, and when I was supposed to be studying science or whatever it was that they were pretending to teach me, what I was actually studying was these books. So there you have the Pelucida books by Edgar Rice Burroughs. Alongside the Pelucida books, I've got the Thongor books, and these ones I mentioned in another video, so they will be familiar to you. And again, these are pulp fantasy books which I bought when I was a teenager, and the reasons for my interest in them are probably self-apparent. But again, these are books that I have fond memories of. I remember thoroughly enjoying them, despite the fact that I now can't remember anything about them. Then after Thongor, we've got The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Lorna Doone, The Way of Word or Weird, I don't know that one at all, Darwin's Watch. We've got the Anastasia Krupnik books. This is a set of really charming and delightful books targeted at young teen girls, and although I'm not a young teen girl myself, I really, really like these books. They're very quirky and funny, and they're just a delightful read. So I've got a full set of Anastasia Krupniks, and then I've got the Swiss Family Robinson, Gulliver's Travels, Dracula, Around the World in 80 Days, Through the Looking Glass, The Jungle Books, The Wind in the Willows, Peter Pan, The Christmas Books by Charles Dickens, White Fang and Call of the Wild by Jack London. Then hiding behind more cat sculptures, we've got Treasure Island, Robinson Crusoe, and of course The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings by Tolkien, because you can't be a book lover and not have those books, especially if you're a fantasy person like myself. And finally, the bottom shelf, which I'm not actually going to bother reading out all the titles and explaining everything, because there's too many and you'll probably find it boring. But the bottom shelf is mainly reference books, specifically books about the film industry and show business and stuff like that. So there you have it. That was my bookshelf. So there you have it. That was my bookshelf tour. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you know what to do. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and I will see you next time. See you later.